Welcome to the Stories Are Soul Food podcast, presented by Cannonball Books, the kids' fiction imprint of Cannon Press.
Met a ghost of a king on the road when I first fell. Fire burning to my knees I fell. Met a ghost of a king on the road.
Here we go. Welcome to SAS.
What are we talking about today, Brian?
Well, you know, it's
the
episode...
same thing we do every night.
Yes.
Pinky. That's an
Yeah.
Animaniacs reference for all of you illiterates out there. Pinky in the Brain.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I've
stuff.
never even watched it, but I know it. That's sad.
Yeah, get
I
on
missed
that.
that.
Your kids would love Pinky in the Brain.
I consider that's really all we need out of this episode is one recommendation people can take to the bank.
The original Pinky in the Brain. I met it in college and thought it was hilarious. I didn't really get to know it again until we rented a stack of DVDs back in the day for a drive to California, and I played Pinky in the Brain. I think my kids got enough Pinky in the Brain in that like 16-hour drive that
They don't need it.
They don't need it again. Like they want. It was great. It was great road trip fodder, and then
It's almost a vaccination level.
they have some references now that they have with them for always, and I don't think anybody's ever asked to watch Pinky in the Brain again. But if you dole them out and
Smaller
little bits,
amounts. Yeah.
maybe watch with them. I don't remember. There's so many of them. I'm sure some of them have some tackiness. I'm sure
Yeah.
we skipped some episodes, but
Right.
so much.
Now
humor.
you're having the on-air qualification for
Always.
recommendation.
Always, every recommendation, always take responsibility. Parents,
Yeah.
don't rely on a podcast to raise your children.
Well, I mean, it's interesting to me that I think it's just things get worse as they go on. You know, my kids enjoyed the first many seasons of Ninjago, but the latest one, I was like, I'm not going to be showing that to them.
Oh man!
And then I realized-
Ninjago got really old, really fast.
Then I realized at root, it's just our fundamental problem of you become your true version of yourself. And that I'd been catechizing my own children with that storyline.
Yeah.
So I had to, addressing it of what's the good part about this, and then as they find what about you makes you you.
It's like, wait, we've been ingesting a lot of trans fat.
Mm-hmm.
Should we find
Yeah.
a better cookie recipe?
Yep.
Yes, we should.
Yeah, and we're like, it's all right. You can eat the cookie one time, but I was realizing, that's part of I think the saving mercy is when they watch that show as a really young kid. As they get older, they think of it as like that. They're like, oh,
that thing of my youth.
Yeah, they're like, that was pretty dumb. I don't like that anymore.
That folly of my youth. Yeah.
So they're ready for Pinky in the Brain, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, just dole them out. Watch them with them.
Yeah. So for episode 125, I actually was hoping to dig deep. My oldest son is reading Percy Jackson. I'm reading it along with him, and I wanted to just kind of talk to you about it because I really don't like it.
Oh,
And I think, but at the same time, I can see how it fits right in the genre that followed on from our Harry Potter conversation. Yeah. It's your genre as well.
Yep.
And it had a massively successful movie, or I guess, 225, I think, million worldwide.
Not enough to make another one.
So it wasn't big enough of a success.
Yep. Cut that in half. Cut that money in half.
For production.
It just theaters take half of it.
Oh, okay.
So then start looking at marketing spend, production spend, everything else, and is it actually worth it? And then now there are some pretty large streaming deals and global streaming, and there's plenty of.
So Disney's making a series of it. I think I saw. So
yeah, I'm sure they're recycling everything they can recycle, and what could they utilize that old carcass for? They could carve it up into a series.
Yeah.
So. But back when it was theatrical, then you'd had a second window on TV and other stuff. Now theatrical is better than that. So if they got 225 now in the box office, that then triggers some high value streaming rights deals that then could break them even and make money. So there are some movies that people are bringing back out again. They're starting to be remade or seen as tenable now because of the nature of how streaming deals and the pay windows on those streaming deals are tied to box office performance and not to your profitability. But
See,
the
I was
box
going to
office
pick your brain on
performance.
it because that story of how it happened, it's kind of a classic author versus studio situation. He's renowned because he published several of the letters that he sent
Yeah.
to the producers because he hated
Yep.
everything about the movie version of his book.
But this is a dude who's repackaging the exact same books with different gods and changing genders of characters and just. I mean, this
is what's interesting to me.
He's not a stalwart artist.
Yeah, and then what he hated about it too. Very interesting to me that he was saying, some good lines about how there are the things I liked, but other than that, it was utterly terrible. Please rewrite it. Fans will hate it. It'll fail. I don't think it did fail hard enough to justify him. But do you think it did? Just that they didn't make another one. So they aged the hero up from, middle grade to 17.
Yep, that's standard. Pretty standard.
Okay.
For a lot of reasons.
And then I was going to ask you why. And they also aged language up quite a bit. So used a number of cusses that he hated because he was like, I just love families and I want kids to feel safe watching my movies. And
yeah, but he is like an LGBT warrior now.
Yeah, he goes and adds trans characters in his later books.
Yep. So it
was interesting to me to watch that, look back on it, and just see someone so unaware of what they're supporting.
Right. I think the nature of the age up that happens is it's really the nature of laws and unions and everything else. It's really, really expensive to shoot with minors, like extremely expensive. And,
no way. Okay.
And so if you can cast anyone over 18, it simplifies your life massively. That's for starters. Part two, it's weird when people are putting posters of kids who are 13 on their walls. It's like, you don't get the same fan base. You can get like all the 13-year-olds, you can get them all to completely fan out about an 18-year-old. And you can get 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds, and you can get everybody. When you're releasing a massively expensive thing, trying to hit that. I mean, Maze Runner did the same stuff. Age it up. Yeah. And then try to, pull everything in. It's very rare that anybody can pull off what they did in Harry Potter, where you actually cast a kid and you're committed to sticking with that kid through their natural growth cycle as a human. So you're using.
So that's actually pretty impressive then.
Yeah, it's actually really strange.
And the costumery would have helped a lot, I think, for Harry Potter.
So but they also got started with Chris Columbus, and Chris Columbus is always like worked with kids and not had a problem with that. He's been right in that genre. So
gotcha. When
he was casting Harry Potter 1, he was committed. He was thinking about where they're going to grow, what are they going to look like when they're 17, because the rhythms of sequels and so on is incredibly difficult. And when you don't know which direction they're going to grow. So you think about Stranger Things, they cast those kids, and now Stranger Things 2, and like, the voices are changing. Like height is massively different. And even reshoots, for when you go look at reshoots where they have to pull characters in, these kids are growing like weeds. And, they don't just stand still. It's actually really logistically difficult. And then you have to hire tutors, and they can only work so many hours. And, they're on, like the rhythm of the set, everything's different. And it's a little different for TV. More people have pulled it off with TV than big feature franchises. Mm-hmm. But if you think about having to take a kid and having this be their life for 4 or 5 years, if you've got a significant, maybe 6, if you've got a 3 feature package, it's not a surprise that they try to age up so that we have
an established character,
and we know this is what he looks like.
Yeah.
This is what he looks like, and he's going to look like this next time and next time and so on. But anyway, with Percy Jackson, I thought they had to age it up. I didn't think they had to add the cusses and everything.
But they basically would have been looking at this like it's too much of a risk to do the Harry Potter treatment on the younger, and we can still make a movie with him functionally the same age if it's successful.
Yeah. So think about the Harry Potter books. Harry is 8 in the first book.
Yeah, is that right?
Isn't he just like,
or does he just turn?
He's super young.
No, this is very young.
Yeah, very, very, very young. And so when you're trying, you just
10.
can't.
10th birthday. 10, yeah.
10th birthday.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I'm trying to think of like when they usually ship off to boarding school over there when they're hoity-toity, but young. So he's 10 years old at the beginning. and then we're going to get him all the way to adulthood. So, I mean, it would have been really difficult to say, hey, we're going to have Harry Potter book 1. He's going to be 16, but he's going to be an 18-year-old playing 16. That's not going to work. They were committed to one particular system.
Gotcha.
But it defined their lives. It absolutely defined these actors' lives. It's what they did growing up. Hey, do you remember when we were growing up and we were playing Harry Potter year round? Like that's
yeah.
That, I mean, it
Right.
absolutely defined their existences.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of that kind of production for a franchise that starts that young. So I get it. I would try to do that with Ashtown. You know, if we were doing an Ashtown movie, I would try to have 18-year-olds. You know, I would, instead of having them, I would try to age them up a couple years.
Yeah.
You know, not a ton of years, but age it up a little bit. And just for the logistics of it, it makes so much more sense.
Do you also feel like it's a tough ask for a child actor? Is that part of why you'd want to do it? Or is it just lowers the level of difficulty on that execution?
It's
like, I mean, is it, because to me, it's one of those things where you're asking, it's almost like if someone were to come up and ask you, would you do a reality TV show about your family? You'd be like, no. Like a similar thing. Would you invest your 10-year-old to be the star
I mean,
of
the
this
conversations
franchise?
we had of would I be willing to have cameras follow me through a basketball season?
Right.
It's like the kids, I actually back for years and years. Let me throw some shade on the current rhetoric teacher at NSA. He didn't institute this, but for years I absolutely forbade, word of the day, forbade. I absolutely forbade any filming at all in rhetoric declamations.
Oh yeah.
Like just
And I
zero.
continued that rule because
when you took it over, because you want the screw ups to be over when the door closes and you're leaving. You want to have a place where people can train and push and reach and grow and mess up.
Right.
And the stakes are actually limited to the moment. They're not going to haunt you at your wedding reception. They're not going to haunt you years later when you lose a job because you gave a declamation that was moronic. You know, when you were a 18-year-old kid and you get up and you say stupid things, and then I get up,
bad stuff.
and I get up and say, you know, you're being an idiot. Like, let's refine this, let's improve this. And then we have a conversation. It's over and somebody's learned and they've moved. In periods of growth, everybody should be free to like mess up, to try and fail. Yeah. And so it was really important to me that there be no documentation of that. I would not want a reality show. 100% no. Mm-hmm. You know, 100% no. I mean, I wouldn't even let my kids have social media.
Right.
You know, it's like
you've forbidden until.
Yeah, I was like, I told him it was my gift to them with the older 3. I've got with Seamus, I have a kind of like a partnership, you know, social media. Mm-hmm. He's not really on it. You know, it's like, but there's like, we have access to the same, he has access to the same Twitter account that I do. You know, he has got access to it. Mm-hmm. That's his basketball Twitter account.
Okay.
But he's not just living on social media. He's not posting. He's not, you know, doing anything except for communicating with me about it. You know, it's like it's kind of like a coaching him through it. His older siblings, I said, you can have it when you're 18, but you will not have, my gift to you is you will not have any social media footprint before the age of 18, because why would you want to set all that in concrete?
Yeah.
Like why? If I'd had it when I was 15, 16, running my mouth, it would, you know, like,
yeah.
You know, it's much better to run my mouth and have a conversation with my dad about how I'm wrong and how I could, you know, improve or be more thoughtful or get straight, rather than having posted it for the internet for all of time.
Yeah.
And I feel that way about kid actors too. The sacrifice is hard to quantify.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
really hard.
I mean, Daniel Radcliffe's career, you know, we've watched a movie, you know, a good movie with him in it later, but it does feel like for many years he's trying to operate in a space where it's difficult, not being thought of as Harry Potter.
But even so when I look at my kids, you look at somebody who's going to high school, there's 4 of those years. You know, I watched 3 of my kids lose a year in COVID and just lose 25% of their high school experience. And it was a massive loss. Like it was a significant loss for them. And it was, you know, it was to scale, I'd say it was probably the biggest loss for my son and my daughter as upperclassmen. My second daughter losing, I think it was her freshman, it might have been her sophomore year. It was still bad. It was significant, but not as. There's very few of these. There's just very, very few of these.
Yeah.
I only have so many more family moments with semi-adult kids where we all get together and everybody's intelligent and fun and having a blast and they're all pals before they all go off and start their own families and all that starts to happen. Those moments are pretty fantastically valuable. And when they're 22, it's kind of like being 23. It's kind of like being 24.
Yeah. Yeah.
The elementary school years, like you can kind of get into a groove of like, hey, we're good at this. We're good at having elementary age kids. And then people start hitting middle school, then high school, and you straddle the stools and you get better and better at it. But then suddenly everybody's kind of in that phase. Like when they're all in that elementary school phase, you can get into like, hey, we're all here together. This is great. Mm-hmm. And then when you're, in the upper phase, you can get a little adjusted to it. Taking those years away for a kid is a massive, massive
sacrifice.
It's a huge sacrifice.
Yeah.
It is a disproportionately large sacrifice to take somebody's 14-year-old year, 15-year-old year away from friends, family, and have their friends and family just be crew and co-actors. And then suddenly, now you can't have any normal relationships ever again because the movie's out and you're famous. And so every one of your peers, like every one of your peers who meets you, there's no normalcy there for you.
Yeah.
And, like you can make friends who've been in the same situation, the same circumstance, and there are others, but it's not, it's not a normal thing. And to sacrifice that is just big. It's just really, really big. Yeah. And bigger than we can imagine. And it's not to say that it's never worth it. It's just a huge cost. So when you're asking a 19-year-old to do something or an 18-year-old to do something, it's not as big as when you're asking a 13 or 14-year-old to lose a year of their life.
Yeah.
For a story.
Right.
And especially when you sign them up, how about lose 6 years of your life? How about from 12 until 18, your existence is going to consist of this film franchise? It's kind of just a massive, massive sacrifice, and one that is a little unnerving.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think
to ask of somebody,
of course, reminds me of the King Richard movie with tennis and doing something similar where you're devoting your child's life toward a particular cause. I think it's kind of exploring that. Yep. It's exploring that question of like how much of a sacrifice is worth it.
Yep. And I've got friends who were child actors and, and have been actors for a long time. A buddy who is on a Disney Channel show and can't really walk a block on a street with him without it being a thing and having to stop and somebody just being weird, like somebody just being weird at him, like they know everything about him. And because they peered into his job, like they peered into his childhood job. Like, maybe you mowed lawns.
Right.
But if everybody's with you, like through all of it, they know or think they know everything about you.
Yeah.
So it's pretty strange. And the worst part is if they're right, if they do actually know everything about you, if everything about you is available to be known by strangers, that's
scary.
That's not great.
It's interesting to me. This is, I think, one of the themes of our podcast is that we don't often think about our years as things that we're spending. And I think that is a theme we come back to regularly on this podcast. And even our children as parents, we don't usually think, all right, I've got with me, I have a 5th grade year to spend for my son. I have to help him spend his 5th grade year for the first time.
Yep.
And
for the first and last time.
Yeah. He's got one.
Hopefully.
Hopefully one. Sure. He could get 2, but that's interesting. Yeah. I don't know how did you guys approach that sort of spending of a childhood year?
We're big in it right now. I mean, and we're right at the tail end with 2
high schoolers
still at home. Yeah. One 8th grader, rising 8th grader, one rising junior. And I've obviously coached my son,
Mhm.
coached my daughter who's now in college, and coached my son, and both in track, and have coached my son in basketball. And as I look at opportunities and I assess opportunities and what I'm going to take and what I'm going to do, part of the cost I'm counting is track season in basketball.
Mhm.
And it would take a lot, like a lot, for me to miss that.
Okay.
And it's because there's just a couple. Like for my son now, there's 2 more. He's got 2 more,
Mhm.
and that's it. And I can invest with him and be there and build and help try to build him into the guy he's going to be for the rest of his life. And there's a clock of how much time I have to invest in this relationship with him, in this pursuit, in this physical discipline, physical, spiritual, emotional discipline, and all this leadership training that he's in. Like I've got 2 years left. If I took one of those off, like to take one of those years off and
Still lose 50% of the
yeah,
time.
yeah, 50% of what I have left with him
Yeah.
before he's in college and I'm supporting him in a different way. So
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, it's a death, but it's a permanent loss of a moment. And recognizing
You're going to make my wife so sad with this.
Yeah.
with these
But
comments.
no, this is how you value stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, this is how you put actual value on it. And it's also really important that you look at don't look at the ones that are gone. Just in the moment that savor them. But in the moment you're in, like I'm sitting here right now, and it'd be really easy for my wife and for myself to get wistful about, oh man, when he was in 3rd grade,
Mhm.
right? The wisdom comes when you can see the present from the future. I've said that before here. Try to see the present moment from the future.
Oh yeah. No, about buying and investing and where do you want to be? Where does your family want to be?
Try to see the present from the future. And then as far as that goes, if I'm sitting here looking back at my son's going into 11th grade and I'm looking back at his 3rd grade year. Okay, great. What am I doing? I'm looking at a present moment. That was the present. I'm looking at it from the future.
Mhm.
So here I am in the future now, looking back at that moment. And I can learn from that, how I look back on that moment. I can learn from that to project how I'm going to look back on the present moment. So it'd be really easy for a mom, for a dad to look back on the little kid years and be like, oh, they were so fun. They were so adorable. This was hilarious. Realize you're going to feel the exact same about this moment.
Yeah.
This moment also is on the conveyor belt. It's also going by. And you will also be in the future looking back at this moment. And I'll be looking back at my 16-year-old son when he's 30, when he's 25, and be like, oh man, that was such a great time, but it was just over like that. It was over so fast.
Yeah.
And he's great. I love being with him now. I will say, I'm sure when he's 25, but I'll look back on this present moment as this incredibly valuable thing that went by too quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so to really invest in it and to be aware that there was only 4 of them, I only have 2 left. Is, it's kind of important. It's kind of important there. So if somebody said, hey, we need you on the other side of the world, for 9 months, there would need to be so much money involved that I'm talking like private jet money so that I could be home a lot. And so they could be there with me.
Yeah.
It's like, it would need to be extremely game-changing, stupid money to even think about it. Because I'm in a phase of my life when I can't, and I think parents do this too much, like way too much, when parents overthink about their lives as primary characters and think too little of their lives as secondary characters.
Mm.
And so my value as a secondary character in the lives of teenagers massively outweighs my own quest and journey as a primary character. So if I'm thinking about my arc and what I'm trying to do, there's a baton I'm handing, there's a generation I'm raising the next generation. That right there is a huge, huge deal.
So you're almost saying that with the opportunity that we have right now is, we're established as adults in some sense. And I think you're right. The temptation is to be constantly thinking about your own career and your own moves.
Yeah.
As opposed to these other people who are in a far more formative time.
Yep. And I would say when you have little kids, you build, like as fast as you can.
Yeah.
You're going to have a second life when they're not little.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of people in the world do the flip. So tons of my friends in the industry, New York and LA, both publishing and film, they do that first life without kids and marriage. They delay marriage and having kids forever.
Mhm.
And they build. They do their thing. They become who they are. And they build whatever they're going to have achieved. And some of them have done this well, and some of them haven't.
Mhm.
They build what they're going to achieve, and then they get married, start having kids. And then they just kind of operate at their identity, who they are and what they've accomplished at that point. And they try to juggle, whatever. But the flip is I got married when I was 22. I'm 45 and I've got 3 kids in college and one going into his junior year. There's this thing that's going to happen as they become who they are. And they just are that person, and we have a relationship and we have a rapport, and they're building and they're taking the baton from me to go be the young, strong agents of building.
Yeah.
That I can go write novels and do things. And, I'll hopefully be around for years on my porch creating content when the business of handcrafting humans is no longer the front burner. They have been crafted. They are who they are, and I have a different role in their lives, and a different relationship. So for my older 3, that's close to done. It's close to done. Now it's not done yet,
right?
But it's getting there. And I don't want to act like there's going to be this cutoff moment. But they're just going to be on the journey of sanctification and growing as adults, but they are adults. And they're equipped with whatever I've equipped them with. So they have whatever equipment I've given them, whatever I've been able to bestow on them, they have, and they're going to be utilizing that in their lives. There's this young phase. The value is just very, very, very different.
Yeah.
And this has looked, in my life, this has looked crazy sometimes to people, really, really crazy.
You mean the focus upon parenting rather than career building?
And the focus, yes. And the focus,
refusal to make the sacrifice unless it's worth it, that kind of
thing.
The
refusal to make the sacrifice, the focus on the construction of childhoods, the creation of childhoods, that kind of focus. Taking my kids, my nieces and nephews were my oldest son's absolute best friends. Mm-hmm. They were besties, little pals. This is all in Death by Living, or not in that way, but the big adventure is when they went and lived in England, we tried to get over there way more than we could afford.
Yeah.
Because it was a moment, and these were his best friends, his cousins. And we wanted to keep that relationship, really profound. And then when I had a book deal, we looked at, we kind of looked at the total amount. And we're like, hey, let's spend this much on doing something crazy with the Merkles in England. Let's go over there, and I asked my sister where they wanted to go. They wanted to see Rome before they came back. And okay, so we're going to fly over, pick us up in the 17 passenger van, and we're going to road trip Europe with 9 little kids.
Yeah.
Part of that is performance art. It's the whole commitment to it was situational performance art. The same way that I was able to come up with the concept behind Collision with Christopher Hitchens and my dad. And I didn't not all of it. I don't want to say that I came up with all of it, but I would say the way I contributed to it, a lot of other minds were involved, but especially with the end in the doc of hey, let's get a bar in Georgetown. We have these formal debates. Let's just create a situation in which this chemistry is going to interact, and we're going to document it. We kind of did that with this whole adventure. Let's do this for our kids and our nieces and nephews, and our own kids are going to remember this forever. Yeah. How do we create these things that will be remembered forever instead of just vanilla milkshakes?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's really interesting how memory works that way with how many moments you try to grab onto and hold on to and they go. But you can actually do the things in your kids' lives where they think back on, oh yeah, I remember that family vacation with all my cousins.
There's one spot on the drive from Moscow to Coeur d'Alene where I vividly remember my dad suddenly just pulling over, and we all got out and he gave us oranges. And we were just on the north edge of, well, probably more the middle of the Coeur d'Alene res. Just I could go find the spot right now. I could go drive to the spot
Yeah.
where we all stood on the side of the road and peeled oranges.
Yep.
And those kinds of moments, having an instinct as a parent to create stuff like that.
Right. We're at the
is-
time of year in the Palouse, when you have to go climb the cut stubble wheat field at least
Yeah.
once with the little kids, because
Yep.
it's just there, and it does feel like something that if you don't do, it's like
They need to feel it. They need to.
you need to understand like this is your place and have that feeling of like, oh yeah, of course I've climbed.
Yeah,
a wheat
I've
field.
done that stuff.
Yeah.
So all this to say, when you value your moments and you try to see them, if the way you look at the past now, the way you look at the past with your kids, in whether you have regrets or you've got things to repent of, or you're just like, we didn't avail ourselves enough of those moments, or it's actually more of a, I just missed them. They were wonderful. Those
Yeah.
were wonderful moments, but I missed them, and I didn't savor them as much as I wish I had in the moment.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing is best used to inform how you view your present. So realize that future you will look at this day today that way.
Right. Well, I find too, especially as a, maybe, I don't know if this is most fathers, but the desire would be, no, I don't want to do that thing because it takes a bunch of work and I already am so busy. I don't want to do this thing, but you have to see past that. Like that's a faithless sort of lazy response,
Yeah.
because sure, the idea of doing a fishing trip with a bunch of kids who will only tangle the lines.
Yep. And that's it.
That is all that will happen. No fish will be caught.
Yep.
When you start weighing those costs that way, you're right. It's a very single-minded. It's one that doesn't understand compound interest of human lives.
Yep.
So as human lives build on themselves, they get bigger than that little investment of time at the beginning.
Yep. And this goes back to, stories, why you read what you read with your kids.
Yeah.
Because those, like I've said before, God made our memories very bizarrely, such that fiction sticks in very concrete ways.
Yeah.
In ways that reality doesn't. And so it is funny. Like when I've said, give them ice cream and read them a story, that will mark memory. Like
It already has. I'm sure
profoundly.
all of our readers have. I have my kids like talking about how they enjoy listening to Harry Potter, but wow, Lord of the Rings with ice cream was better. That's what my older kids are saying. Just that feeling of like, hey, we love.
Hey, we're doing it's milkshake and Lord of the Rings night.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, like that's why jammy rides are great too, where it's like whenever you break routine, it's like, or set a routine. I'd say break routine and then set routines that they can anticipate and look forward to.
Right.
Like both of those things. So pulling over off the side of the road and eating oranges, getting everybody out of bed after they're all in bed for milkshakes and a story time.
Yeah.
That goes down big. Like those things are pretty incredible.
That reminds me, I think it works with wives too. I think it's something a lot. You tend to just think you're kind of just, oh yeah, of course, both me and my wife are doing my career, but that's actually not. Your career is helping the family go. And
and there's been moments too where when we found out that Heather's mom was sick, it was still like it was really kind of downplayed. It was not a huge deal. And in that moment, I told her, it's like, okay, 100% commitment. Like we're going to be down there like every chance we get, because I think this is a much bigger deal. I think this could be really bad. And she died pretty quickly. There wasn't that much time.
Yeah.
And we straight up maxed the credit cards. And we did that before we were told, oh, it's really bad. We started going down there. We were just renting beach houses and having this rhythm that was a really beautiful rhythm with Heather's parents and all her sisters and cousins. And like, there are these amazing memories because we looked at the moment and realized like, okay, we have to really dump into this moment. And, it's like, there was zero regret, like absolutely no regret of like, oh, now I'm going to pay off all these cards. It's like, because all of that, as much as that was not fun, but all of that was the price tag for these things that were now, that we did that were now no longer doable. Like not one of those trips I would have erased and said, oh man, maybe one fewer sessions for my kids with their grandmother, maybe one fewer session. It's like, no, we just, that's what plastic's for, Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
So
snip.
Yeah. But anyway, it's that kind of thing. So seeing the moment, oh, my sister and her family, they're in England. My son's best friends in his life, his cousins are all in England. How do I protect that? How do I invest in that for him? The price tag goes way up. We could have had a nicer car sooner.
Yeah.
But we went and bombed around Europe in this, 17 passenger van. So I mean, that's just if you take away one thing, see your creation of childhoods as performance art.
I like that.
So,
yeah, one of the most pretentious things I like is T.S. Eliot's Four Quartets, just because it's talking about that.
I thought you said you weren't pretentious in a previous podcast. Okay, it's pretentious and you like it. I get it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's what he's talking about is how do you, when you're present in a moment, like what does it mean to be present? And then how do you both reflect against all the previous things that came before and continue to look forward? And I think that is a very, he of course, he ties it into God's perspective on the moment.
Yeah.
And that's the true present because it's not, God's outside of the time. And I find that being a very valuable perspective to bring into these things.
But honestly, if you are viewing the raising of children as performance art and you are able to ask, what will I wish that I had done?
Yeah.
Like tomorrow, what will I wish I did today? In a year from now, what will I wish that I had done today? And if you can get a sense of that, that is huge.
Yeah.
And that actually in my own like discovery of a brain tumor and our own saga, that never felt very real to me. The whole thing felt staged. All of it was performance art. And overwhelmingly the construction of a chapter that was going to be permanently etched into my kids' childhoods. So the year of dad's brain tumor, the year of dad's brain surgery, the year of, he might die. That, like how we handled that, how I handled that, how I decided to handle it and approached it was entirely designed for my kids. So all of it was for them.
This is obviously very personal, but like, did you have two paths of if I do die here, this is how I want this to have gone down?
I had letters written to my kids. I had the whole thing. But it's sort of like, okay, so if this is it, if this is the end of the line, what do I want the flavor to have been going into that?
Yeah.
And if this is not the end of the line, this was just a pretty traumatic and stressful thing for my kids. How do I want them to now be equipped for more stress and trauma? Like, how are they going to imprint a reaction? How they handle trial and how they handle hardship?
Yeah, because COVID was coming.
Yeah, and little did we know. Little did we know at all. And so they really have handled their own struggles with joy. And so knowing that to waver there, really, really clearly, like if I had decided to freak out, if I decided to stress out in that moment, that I am creating terrible performance art for my children. It's like I need to be a character, and you have to realize that playing a character is not the same thing as lying or hypocrisy. I wasn't brave facing it. It's like I was
a coping mechanism.
You have to be full method. You got to be full. You got to be full method. And so I was full method.
Yeah,
the whole way. It's like I laughed the hardest I've ever laughed in my life during that time. It was hilarious. It was great. It was crazy. It was all the stakes were through the roof. Everything was insane. But realizing that I had to be a character in my kids' lives through that time, a specific character in a specific way. And I had to actually be it. I wasn't going to be someone else pretending to be that. I had to be that character for this trial to bear fruit, for it to actually be the right thing in their childhoods to help make them stronger and draw them closer to God and to each other and everything else. So it was those decisions are extremely practical. Like
Yeah.
how do you stress out about the bills when financial pressures are on? How do you react to the spill when your kid drops the gallon of milk? When you are being a character like performance art, how you respond to those things is pretty significant, and scale it all the way up to brain tumors and all the way down to spilled milk.
That's
so
great.
And then what stories you read and what you give them, like what Pavlovian response you give them. This is why ice cream is great. So why you imprint joy of taste while listening, like you actually do associate these things. You know, it's root beer floats and Tolkien tonight. It's actually, we're doing Sundays and Tolkien. We do this every Friday. We're doing whatever.
Yeah.
It's like those things are really, really big, and they matter a lot in the creation of permanent humans who will exist for all time.
Well, this is not where I was expecting to go with the Percy Jackson episode, but
because I never read Percy Jackson. Let's
but
be
I
honest.
can see you've successfully avoided having to discuss it.
I never read Percy Jackson. I have it on good sources that it's thunderingly mediocre.
Yeah.
I have very little respect for him, just with what he's done with the franchise afterwards.
Yeah.
And it's not been a major factor in my kids' lives. Percy Jackson has not been.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think that's all we got. Unfortunately, all we have time
you got a
for.
bolt.
We got a bolt, but that's good. We got somewhere valuable, even if 225 million was not.
Yeah. So when you're gonna
valuable enough,
if you're gonna read your kids Percy Jackson out loud, just do it with things like string cheese, not the milkshakes.
Right. No.
Just subliminally, like.
I think
in an undercurrent, establish for your kids what they should be thinking.
No,
like
get
kids,
that.
it's treat and book night. It's string cheese and
that's more of a green bean book, I think.
I don't know. Green beans are good for you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Maybe it's the cheese balls, the ones from the dollar store.
Cheese balls.
Dollar store cheese balls.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. This has been SAS.
Episode 125 finished.
Get us your Sound of Freedom questions.
Oh yeah, that's the lamp pick. Don't forget.
Sound of Freedom discussion coming. Get us all your questions. Peace.
If you're a SAS listener who often makes it to the end of these videos and the end of our podcast, when I start talking, you'll know that I'm often bringing up Canon Plus. So I'm going to let you, in a couple seconds, watch a video that explains why Canon Plus is the premier Christian streaming service for entertainment, education, and theology. Give it a watch, and then please come join us on Canon Plus if you haven't already.
Does your streaming content make you a better wife and mother? A better husband and father? Or, when you sit down and pick up the remote, does the content you consume attack you?
You fat bastard.
Is it at war with everything you say you stand for? Does it make you stronger? Does it make your family stronger? How much darkness streams directly into your home every week? How much do you pay for the privilege of consuming whatever new dark thing Hollywood algorithms have assigned to you and to your family?
Just my two dads and me.
It doesn't have to be that way. Canon Plus is building a global platform with one simple goal: to create and deliver great content that will help Christian families grow stronger. Content to encourage, equip, challenge, and inspire. Yes, these times are bleak, but the darkness cannot win for long. Light is far more powerful. With thousands of audiobooks, podcasts, truth-telling documentaries, and curriculum for all ages, Canon Plus wants to help your family laugh, sing, learn, and grow stronger together. And we're just getting started. We want the resources we produce to help you become a lighthouse in your own community, armed with courageous joy and faith that burns bright, right alongside millions of others who are just as determined to live in a way that honors God in these dark times. Your own food shouldn't attack you. Not at the table, and not gathered with your family on the couch. We are building a true alternative, and we can't do it alone. We need committed Christian families to build with us. So consider this your invitation. Pop some corn, grab the blankets, and help us build a streaming platform unlike any other. A platform that will strengthen Christians, mind, body, and soul. We saved you a spot on the couch. Canon Plus. Cancel the darkness. Invite light.